All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tracy Marshall. I'm the Division Director for FAMLI at Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. FAMLI is an acronym standing for the Family and Medical Leave Insurance, and I do want to welcome you all to this rulemaking hearing for this division and program. The time is 5:03 p.m. and today is Monday, October 17th, 2022. This is a public rulemaking hearing held online with participants listening and speaking by internet and phone. A recording of this hearing will be added to the administrative record for these rules. Thank you all for joining us here today. The following division officials are also joining me on this call. David Gallivan, who is our incoming branch manager for compliance and appeals. Joshua Mayers, branch manager for case management. Evan Grimes, our policy unit manager. Lydia Woligoski, our policy manager. And Jessica Smith, our communications manager. Today, we will accept testimony for one set of proposed family rules that were published in the Colorado Register as proposed rules on October 10th, 2022. These are the regulations concerning private plans 7 CCR 1107-5. Anyone may speak on this rule. We will not be taking testimony on any other family policy topics that are not part of these proposed rules this evening. For all rules from this division, the notice of public hearing and associated rulemaking documents were filed with the Secretary of State for publication on its website and in the state register as provided by the Colorado Administrative Procedures Act. The division then posted all rulemaking documents on its website and publicized them to our contact list of stakeholders. For more information on any of these proposed rules from the division, visit the division's rulemaking page at family.colorado.gov on the tab labeled Proposed and Adopted Rules. Before we begin, a few rules and guidelines for the record. In this hearing, the division is accepting oral testimony as well as written comments through the Zoom chat window. The same administrative record will include all oral testimony, all comments in the chat window, and all written comments submitted outside of this hearing. All testimony and comments are reviewed by the same division officials. While you are free to comment or testify by whatever means you prefer, there is no need for you to repeat points in multiple forms of testimony and comment submission. Written comments may be submitted in a variety of ways. You may email them to the division. You can submit them through this form on our website, or if they are short, you can just type them into the chat window in this Zoom hearing. The comment deadline is tomorrow morning, which is October 18th at 8 a.m. This hearing is for comments related to the proposed rules. If you have individualized or general family questions that you would like answers to, we would be happy to respond to those outside of this hearing. Email questions to cdle_famli_info@state.co.us so that we can route your question to the right person to give you an individualized response. We anticipate that the time available for today's hearing will be enough to hear all testimony on the proposed rules. This public rulemaking hearing will end whenever testimony is done and there is no one left online who indicates they wish to speak or otherwise provide a comment. Given the potential length of division hearings and the number of people participating who may not have participated previously in division hearings, I do want to stress there is no need to stay for the entire hearing. For anyone who wishes to hear all testimony, the division is recording the hearing and will post the recording on our rulemaking page. That page again is family.colorado.gov, famli.colorado.gov. On the off chance that we have any technical difficulties this evening, such as the one I'm having right now, on the off chance that we have any technical difficulties this evening, this hearing may be continued to another date, which we will announce at the end of today's hearing, with details posted on our webpage by noon tomorrow. Before we begin, a few instructions for our participants. Please keep your computer or phone on mute. If you are testifying, still keep your phone on mute until we call you by name. For those speaking, when we call on you, please do the following things. Please unmute yourself. Please state your full name, job, and role, and whether you are speaking on behalf of any organization. Start by saying which rule or rule citation you wish to discuss. Please speak in a clear, slow voice. We may interrupt you to ask you to repeat anything that we think may not have been heard or that we think may not be audible on our recording. Please remember that testimony is limited to 3 minutes. If you wish to remain anonymous, it is your right to do so, and you can say your first name or give a fake name, or just describe as much as you are comfortable to us about your role or the experience you are here to testify about. We know many of you have more input on these rules than 3 minutes of speaking may be able to cover, and that's why we've been soliciting written comments prior to tonight's hearing and will continue to do so until 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, October 18th. Again, if you have more to say than you can cover in 3 minutes of speaking, you can submit the rest as a comment either by emailing it to cdle_family_rules@state.co.us or by using our Google form to submit written comments. If you would like to give your name and information for the record, whether you testify or not, or if you are not on the division's stakeholder list and would like to be sent notices of proposed rules or other family publications, you can email the division at cdle_family_info@state.co.us after this hearing, or you can fill out any of the division RSVP forms on pages linked from our rulemaking page, which again is family.colorado.gov. Thank you again for your interest in and your participation in these important matters of Colorado law and policy. Thank you again for taking the time to attend this public hearing and to participate in our rulemaking process. We will now proceed with oral testimony. We will start with those who signed up to testify in advance, and I will hand over to my colleagues and they will begin to moderate this event.
Great. Excuse me. Thanks, Tracy. First up to testify, we have Alexander Wick with Hangdog Hospitality LLC. Alexander, if you are here and ready, unmute yourself and the floor is yours for 3 minutes. Going once and twice for Alexander Wick. Perhaps you'll join us later. Moving on, next up we have Abigail O'Connell with Sun Life.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Somebody set the clock. I know I've got 3 minutes. Hopefully I won't take it all. Let me pull up my comments. So good evening. I'm on the East Coast, so it's dark here already. My name is Abigail O'Connell. I work for Sun Life and I'm speaking on behalf of them. Sun Life is both an employer in the state and we're also a provider of group insurance benefits, including paid leave products across several states who have programs like Oregon's. We're very excited for paid leave to come to Oregon. To come to Colorado. I'm sorry, I've had a lot of meetings today. We're very excited for paid leave to come to Colorado. We're a big advocate of it. We give it to all our employees because we have employees in states that don't have it. And we have a lot of employees in the state of Massachusetts, which has had a program for several years. So I really appreciate this opportunity. And I wanted to make a couple of points. Number one, I wanted to speak on the private plan market. Private plans have flourished in New York and Massachusetts. And we know that those states have successfully launched programs. And most recently, both states are actually dropping their state plan rates as they head from 2022 into 2023. So in regard to section 5.43M subsection 1, we would really encourage you to lower the rate to apply for a private plan. We think $1,200 is exorbitant when compared to other states. We've also seen that the states with the healthiest private plan markets have low barriers to entry for private plans. Massachusetts and New York don't have a rate to apply or don't have a fee to apply. And both states, we as a private plan provider have been able to burden share with the state. And we think that the solvency in those states speaks to our argument that private plans should be supported. We would also think that the $1,200 is exceptionally high, especially for small employers. And a lot of private plans offer enhanced benefits, including Sun Life's our own. So we would appreciate if that fee was potentially reduced. I have a lot of comments. I know a lot of my colleagues in other carriers are going to speak to many of them. So if I am picking one more area, I guess I would note appeals in section 5.18 subsection 2. And I would say that I would consider, or I would have you consider an initial claim dispute to go to the private plan administrator. And then if it's not resolved, to go to the state. We pay the vast majority of claims, and sometimes there's a misunderstanding, like information didn't get communicated to the carrier, and we would really appreciate the opportunity to resolve that initially before it burdens the state by requiring a review by the state. So I'll cede the rest of my time. I really appreciate everybody's attention, and I'm excited to listen in on what others have to say. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Abigail. Next up, we have Stacy Campbell with the Colorado Chamber of Commerce and Campbell Litigation, LLC.
Great, thank you so much, and I will try to go quickly here. So I'm with Campbell Litigation. We defend companies in labor and employment matters throughout the country. Also, I spent a great deal of my time with the Colorado Chamber of Commerce, specifically chairing their Labor and Employment Council, and had the opportunity to be on the FAMLI task force several years ago. So I've got a few comments, but I'll go quickly and tell me if I am running out of time. The first is going to be in the division approval 5.4.G. It asks for a bond that's equal to 1 year of premiums, and we believe there's no bond needed. Employers have already paid 1 year of premiums into the state in 2023. And I know when we were on the task force, I don't believe we were talking about a bond. As it relates to denial of private plans on 5.5, I think like Abigail pointed out, there's no appeal process. We believe there should be an appeals process for denials of a plan. And the way it's set up right now, it allows you to, once you're denied, to reapply or to try to correct it within 30 days. If you're outside of that 30 days, it infers that there is a new administration fee. To me, that makes absolutely no sense. There should be no administration fee, regardless of the 30-day resubmission, because you should be only looking at just revisions to what needs to be done. As it relates to the renewal requirements in 5.7, we believe that you should allow private plans to be initially approved for a longer period than 2 years. We'd approve them for 8 years. It saves the employer the $1,200 renewal application fee, and the state already has a checks and balances as it relates to employee appeals to the division. So you will know if a plan's not doing what they're supposed to do. As it relates to Rule 5.12.3, record keeping and reporting, we believe there should be no annual summary needed. There's a checks and balances with the employee appeals to the division, and the division also has authority to request private plan information within 28 days. And so we do not believe that is needed. Let me just make sure I'm in the right spot here. Next. As it relates to plan modifications, 5.13.3, we believe that the division should define minimal and in-depth reviews. The state is likely not going to be able to review modifications to private plans within the 14 days that the rules allow for. Most modifications, we believe, are going to be pushed to in-depth reviews, and that's going to require employers to have to pay another administration fee. We think changes to a state-approved insurer should not be an in-depth review at all, since the insurers have to be approved by the state, and there should definitely be no administration fee. As it relates to voluntary termination, 5.14, we believe there should be no need for 1 year's premiums paid to the division. Once the private plan terminates, it seems to me that the employer submits the premiums to the division, and at a minimum, the division should get the unused premiums in the plan with employee contributions. The way it's set up now, it says that the employer cannot, in submitting the contributions, they cannot submit any contributions that were from employees. But if the private plan already required employees to contribute, it seems to me it just makes sense to allow that to happen. As it relates to involuntary termination, 5.16, we again believe there's no need for 1 year's premiums paid to the division. At a minimum, the division should get the unused premiums in the plan with employee contributions if the private plan allowed for employee contributions, and require the division to provide written notice and a 30-day opportunity to cure each alleged violation, including a final notice of termination, so that the employer, the plan can try to fix what is seen as a violation, and increase the time for involuntary appeals from 14 days to 30 days. And I will leave it at that, as I believe I am close to my time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have Lauren Furman from the Colorado Chamber of Commerce. Lauren?
Thank you, Evan. Lauren Furman here on behalf of the Colorado Chamber of Commerce, and I'll try not to duplicate a lot of what Stacy has shared, but we do have very similar concerns on behalf of our members. I'm going to try and narrow down those concerns to areas that have caused a lot of confusion and costs for employers statewide, or will cause a lot of costs for employers statewide. First, 5.43G on the application requirements, as Stacy mentioned, requiring employers who want to self-insure to submit a surety bond is creating a lot of angst for our members. This is seems pretty unreasonable and very costly for employers, especially when they're already going to have to submit 1 year's worth of premiums. 5.5 under subsection 5 of this provision, it does prevent a private plan administrator from filing an appeal if the plan is denied. We do believe that a private plan should be eligible for filing an appeal, and I would say that there is precedence already for this, because a decision by a division would already constitute final agency action, which is subject to appeal under the APA. So again, we would want that ability for a plan to file an appeal. As Stacy mentioned, requiring another administration fee if a plan is resubmitted for approval, even if there is correct information, seems kind of silly to me. Why are we penalizing an employer for submitting accurate information to the division? The expiration of 2 years is incredibly short. For our members, I know other states provide for 3 years, and they are already conveying that 3 years isn't enough. So would recommend extending that time period and not hitting employers with yet another administrative fee of $1,200. Again, same argument with the modification of a private plan. Believe this is incredibly unreasonable, costly, especially if that plan has already been approved by the division, or if it's another insurance provider that has already been approved by the state. And again, costly if employers have to pay another $1,200. So I've run through these pretty quickly. We have submitted formal comments that are much more extensive on behalf of the Colorado Chamber of Commerce. I can't express enough how concerned I am on behalf of the employer community about these specific draft regulations. We work closely with the division. I'm hoping that we can see some changes, improvements to this, but allowing employers to choose a private plan has always been a priority of the Colorado Chamber. We worked with the legislative sponsors on this provision when it was moving through the legislative process. Don't believe Colorado should make this option cost prohibitive and overly burdensome for employers. So with that, I would just say that we hope that these regulations could be improved by the division. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Lauren. Okay, next, it looks like we have Sophie Merriam with the Colorado Fiscal Institute. Sophie?
Hello. Good evening, members of the Family Division. My name is Sophie Merriam, and I'm a labor policy analyst at the Colorado Fiscal Institute, a member of the Family Coalition. CFI is a statewide nonprofit organization that provides credible, independent, and accessible information and analysis of fiscal and economic issues facing Colorado. Ensuring that all workers have access to benefits such as paid family and medical leave is a critical step towards building a Colorado where all workers have the opportunity to attain economic security for themselves and their families. In our written testimony, you'll find a substantive comment list of the proposed plan rules that have raised concerns for CFI. For the purpose of time, I'll focus on the impact of a few provisions on worker justice issues and the health of the state public fund. If an employer does not continue an approved private plans coverage through the termination's effective date, as outlined in Rule 514, subsection 4, this should not result in workers losing their benefits. The rules must specify what happens to workers with benefit claims if an employer defaults on the private plan before the termination date. The best practice here would be to say that workers can file directly with the state as if they were already paying into the public fund. Further, the failure of an employer to comply with the statute should not put the health of the state fund at risk. Hence, the state should seek recovery of the full amount paid in benefits in addition to and not instead of the fines. We also strongly support the surety bond requirement for employer self-insured private plans due to the importance of this provision for the health of the state fund. As stated in Rule 5.3, subsection 2, the bond must be an amount equal to 1 year of total premiums. CFI strongly supports this rule language and approach due to the importance of ensuring that the state, as well as employers and workers who have paid into the program, are not picking up the tab for employers who are not meeting their obligations. CDLE should also ensure that workers whose benefits were illegally denied or delayed due to private plan violation are provided with financial compensation beyond fines to private plan administrators. We strongly support the fines on private plan administrators outlined in Rule 519, subsection 3. However, we also urge CDLE to take on an additional rule in addition to fines that provides financial compensation to workers whose benefits were denied or delayed. Such an addition would help ensure workers can make ends meet during critical life events that they would take family leave for, such as caring for a new child or providing care for elders. And it would ensure that these violations don't leave workers who have paid in and invested in family without the benefits that they're entitled to. Finally, large corporations should pay their fair share in application fees when applying for a private plan. Section 5.4, subsection 3, Part M proposes a flat administration fee of $1,200 for private plan applications through 2024. However, this flat fee is not equitable. Large companies place a larger cost burden on the division to oversee relative to small business counterparts. Meanwhile, smaller businesses have less resources at their disposal to bear the application costs. So we urge CDLE to consider an alternative approach of tiering the fee amount to the size of the business or the number of covered individuals under a specific private plan. This will ensure that larger companies with thousands of employees pay their fair share, while small businesses are not overburdened. Thank you all for your work on these proposed rules, for your engagement of all stakeholders, and the opportunity to provide public testimony tonight.
Thanks, Sophie. Next up, we have Steve Claiborne with American Council of Life Insurers. Steve?
All right. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. As Evan mentioned, my name is Steve Claiborne with the American Council of Life Insurers, ACLI. I'm a senior actuary for health insurance and reinsurance, and I'm speaking on behalf of the members of ACLI, which represents most of the life insurance companies in the country, including insurers that have delivered paid leave products and services to employers and employees for decades. We want to thank you again for this open process you have adopted to take input and comments from stakeholders. I was panicked at the beginning when you said only 3 minutes, and I was looking at my 2 pages of commentary, but the good news is we have submitted a comprehensive comment letter. And I'll just focus, I was going to focus on 3 items, but I'll just focus on one since one of our members, Abigail, talked about the fee has been talked about by everybody so far. And also the appeals process. We think that it should at least go back to the private plan administrator, because many of the items that are missing when there's a denial, it's usually extra information that can be easily obtained and avoid any appeals courts. But the topic I'll focus on is in section 5.11.2 under calculation of benefits under private plans. We respectfully request that you consider allowing private plans to use the employee's current average weekly wage with the private plan employer in the case where they have moved from one job to another. Requiring the private plan administration to reach out to the division each time could involve hundreds of contacts to the division each day and could significantly delay application process and benefits to the employee. In most cases, employees make more at their current job than prior employment, so employees would receive a benefit that is aligned with the increase in wages. If it is decided that this provision must remain, we have suggested wording to modify the language to identify when a reach out to the division would not be needed. For example, if the employee would receive the maximum weekly benefit amount based on the private plan employer's current wages, and if the employee attests that they are making more money with the private plan now with their employer than their prior employer, then that they don't have to, my apologies, they don't have to reach out, the employer does not have to reach out to the division. We do have language that we did not include in our letter, but we're more than happy to email it after this hearing. So as always, thank you for the opportunity to comment, and we continue to look forward with any questions you may have and working with all the stakeholders in Colorado to make this a success. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Stephen. Okay, next up, we have Caitlin Altone from 9 to 5 Colorado. Caitlin?
Hi, thank you. Yes, my name is Caitlin Altone. I'm representing 9 to 5 Colorado. I really appreciate the opportunity to share comments on the proposed private plan rules. 9 to 5 Colorado is a statewide member-based economic justice organization that centers gender and racial equity. We represent workers throughout the state. I chair the FAMLI Implementation Coalition, which includes approximately 40 organizations and advocates from across Colorado who work together on the successful passage of FAMLI, and we now work towards its equitable implementation. So I would like to direct the division to written comments that will be submitted with our partners, A Better Balance and the Colorado Fiscal Institute, as well as other members of our coalition. But in this time, I'll briefly highlight elements of the FAMLI statute for this group that support our goal of equitable implementation, and that will frame the written comments that will be submitted shortly. Firstly, the statute states that employers may apply to the division for approval. I'm highlighting this because the use of private plans or self-insurance is a privilege. The division needs to have the tools for appropriate oversight and accountability. Secondly, the statute states that workers under private plans or self-insurance have all the same rights, protections, and benefits, and cannot be subject to additional conditions or restrictions or cost. Strong language was created around this because of the power imbalance that exists between workers and employers and claimants and insurers. With this in mind, we are recommending such revisions as explicitly stating that internal appeals processes are fully voluntary, increasing reporting standards the same requirements as with the rest of the family program, and shortening the private plan approval duration. Written comments with our partner organizations will expand on these recommendations as well as others. And lastly, I just want to say thank you to the Family Division for your continued work on these rules and in building the program. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak in this collaborative process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. I will very quickly see if Alexander Wick has joined the meeting. He was the only other remaining person who signed up in advance for testimony. Alexander, are you with us? That appears not to be so. We have a couple of people so far who have requested via our chat box to speak. We would encourage any more of you who wish to do that to just note as much in the chat box, and we will call on you in the order in which we receive them. So first up, we have Gina Rutledge from MetLife.
All righty, thank you very much. Can you all hear me?
Yes, crystal clear.
Great. So again, thank you very much for this open forum for public speaking. My name is Gina Rutledge from MetLife. And just to share, MetLife has had over 150 years of claim administration. And we started doing, I'm trying to get my video, there we go. We've been doing absence administration since the beginning of FMLA, 24, 25 years ago. And we've been there with, New York paid family leave, California paid family leave. So doing even paid family leave for 18 plus years. And we have over 50,000 US group customers that we service. So some of the comments that we make are definitely based on claims experience and trying to help employees going through a claim, and just employers, because they are kind of the pivoting factor of when you have an employee needing help, they always go to their employer. So I agree with Abby and with Steve from the, Abby from Sun Life and Steve from ACLI on what they are looking for. And then would just like to add a couple more things in my 3 minutes. So the first one, 1107-5.44. This talks about rolling out private plans in 2 separate calendar quarters. So it works in the original. So you've got a private plan that would come in July 1st to support something that's going to be available for paying benefits on January 1, 2024. So that initial rollout, that works, but this is going to be ongoing. So if we think about businesses who may not make that decision on how they're going to do private plan coverage until after they get their feet wet, they may give you a private plan request in that application, maybe in February of 2024. Well, if you approve it, if you have to wait 2 quarters, that private plan wouldn't kick in until July. So that may be just a little bit overboard. We do think that if you could have that regulation change to support what would happen just as we roll out. So what would need to happen in January through October of 2023, and then maybe have additional support for those that are coming in 2024. The second thing that I'd like to share is that when you have a company that has more than one tax ID number, that means they'll have more than one private plan, but maybe that private plan is exactly the same, and employees don't always know that they're rolling up into different tax ID numbers. So we recognize that the state is asking for all of the applications to come in the same, having an application, submitting the fee, which we agree is kind of high. $1,200 is definitely high. But for those companies that have more than one tax ID, that's 12 plus 12 plus 12, a lot of money, that they may not be able to submit their applications, or they may not recognize that they need to submit their applications for all of the different tax ID numbers. The workers should not be penalized for that. According to 1107 5.5, they are asking for different approval dates for those different tax ID numbers. And what we're asking for is maybe if a company comes in with more than one tax ID number, to let that effective date of the private plans align together. So thank you. That's about my 3 minutes. I appreciate your time and have a good day. Thank you again for this ability to testify.
Thank you very much, Gina. Next on my list here, Natalie Petrucci, are you here and interested in testifying?
Yes, thank you, Evan. All right. Good evening. I'm Natalie Petrucci, a state attorney with the Better Balances Colorado office, and I'm based in Aurora. We are a national legal advocacy nonprofit that provides technical and policy support on paid family and medical leave programs across the country, including right here in Colorado. First, I'd like to say thank you to CDLE for your work and engagement on these rules. I also appreciate the opportunity to testify today, and we'll be supplementing this testimony with written comments. Our organization is submitting jointly with 9 to 5 and the Colorado Fiscal Institute. First, I would like to address our strong support for the division's proposal outlined in the private plan rules at 5 subsection 20 that requires all covered employers to remit premiums to the division during 2023. But allows those employers who later obtain approval to offer a private plan with an effective date no later than January 1st of 2024 to seek reimbursement of the 2023 premiums. This plan ensures employers are paying into the fund from the start of the program as required by the family statute, and that no one is being let off the hook for premiums based on the possibility of a future but uncertain approval of a private plan. Next, I would like to make clear that despite what we have heard today, it is a requirement that an employee covered by a private plan pursue an internal appeals process within a private plan, violate pursuant to CRS 8-13.3, section 521(1)(I), by imposing a significant condition on the employees covered by a private plan as opposed to the state plan. The rules governing private plans must state clearly that any internal appeals process or mechanism within an approved private plan must be discretionary or optional for employees covered by that plan. Employers must also be required to disclose in employee notices that any internal appeals process is optional to employees. Third, reports from private plans must contain essential data that is statutorily required to be collected by the division pursuant to CRS 8-13.3 or section 519. This section lists what key areas of information must be collected by the division and reported annually to the legislature. There is no exception for this data from private plans. Accordingly, the rules must at minimum explicitly require private plans to report on the specific areas required by law. And finally, regarding private plan rule 5.7.3, we support a shorter maximum approval duration for private plans after 2 consecutive renewals. 8 years is a very long time. This is especially the case if the renewal process is fairly simple and straightforward. The initial application and subsequent renewal processes for approved plans are important points at which issues can be caught and corrected by the division and compliance checked. A shorter duration for approval will support the division's enforcement and quality control functions and ensure the rights of workers covered by private plans are not being violated. Therefore, we should support a shorter maximum possible duration for approval of no more than 5 years after 2 subsequent approvals. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Next up, we have Molly Steineman with the Colorado Restaurant Association. Molly?
Great, thank you so much. My name is Molly Steineman, and I'm testifying on behalf of the 6,000 plus restaurants we represent at the Colorado Restaurant Association. Thanks for allowing me this time to comment on the private plan guidance. And for the sake of brevity, I can just give a general us too to the comments made by our colleagues at the State Chamber of Commerce. But I do want to reiterate some of the points that are most important to the restaurant industry. We continue to have pretty serious concerns about the proposed requirement in 5.4G that an employer submit a surety bond in order to offer a self-insurance option to employees. This is incredibly burdensome for employers, especially those in the restaurant industry that work on razor-thin margins. And to be quite honest, this renders this option completely untenable for the industry. We're also asking that the administrative fee that is assessed for plans that are resubmitted within 30 days be completely reconsidered. There are instances in which a plan administrator may need to correct or backfill information, and they should not be penalized for that. I'm going to wrap up here because a lot of the points that I was going to make have already been made by some of our colleagues, but I want to thank you again for this opportunity to testify this evening. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Molly. And next up, Todd Frederickson.
Thank you. I'm here on behalf of the Sheet Metal and Air Conditioning Contractors National Association, the Rocky Mountain Mechanical Contractors Association, and the Rocky Mountain chapter of the National Electrical Contractors Association. We've submitted comments earlier today, so I won't go over all of them, but I do want to pick out a couple of highlights. The overarching concern is that the rules on private plans include a multi-employer option under Taft-Hartley, so that Taft-Hartley plans can be brought into the fold. There are already a framework to provide these sorts of benefits, and through the contributions of member contractors can afford their employees, their union employees, all of the benefits that are provided under the FAMLI Act. Our comments, generally speaking, are broken into a couple of categories. The first one is to make sure that there's some recognition that union employers often also have non-union employees. And as a result, most of those employers will have to have options, an option under the Taft-Hartley plan to cover their union employers, as well as an option either through the state plan or a separate private plan that qualifies, given the standards under the proposed rules, to provide that benefit through the private plan vehicle. Separately, there's some confusion among our members contractors as to whether the self-insured rules and guidance are intended to cover these multi-employer plans that themselves are self-insured. And so we've asked for clarification in a couple of places in the rules. And so would ask that the division give some thought to those. And of course, if you have questions, we're more than happy to answer them. In terms of other provisions in the rules, we want to make sure that in addition to what I mentioned back in 5.3 with the options for union, non-union employers, also that's covered in 5.8. And then last, but certainly not least, there should be some mechanism for the return of monies that are paid while multi-employer plans are going through the approval process. Employers will be making those contributions, and we're asking that the division come up with a process to allow those contributions be forwarded to a multi-employer plan so that we don't have employers that are making both contributions to those plans as well as the contributions that are required in 2023 before they have an approved plan. Thanks, Evan.
Thank you very much, Todd. So it looks like that is the last of our participants who have either signed up in advance or have piped up during this meeting to provide testimony. And so to give folks a chance, if you're waiting and considering whether or not to provide testimony or to allow for some people who may join the public hearing late, we will pause here. We will give it 5 minutes, I would say, after the last person has spoken before we end the public hearing. And so I will go ahead and mute myself and start a 5-minute timer. So if anybody would like to testify, please let us know in the chat. I do just want to add really quick, some of you may be participating via telephone or something. So if you don't have access to the chat function and you would like to testify, feel free to simply unmute and speak up. All right, well, that's been 5 minutes. I will note that the time is 5:52. It appears we have no more people offering testimony. I will again remind you all that the deadline for written comment is tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. And thank you all very much for your participation and your valuable input. So that concludes this public hearing for the private plan rules. Have a good night.
Thank you, everyone.